So without further ado, I'm going to let Sid come up here and tell you about his company, and he's going to be speaking about creating employee engagement with a unified vision. Here you go, Sid.
Great. Well, thanks, Nicole. That was a very kind introduction, and I'm humbled to be among such elite leaders. I'm actually the smallest of the companies that we're going to be representing today. But my story is one of transparency. I'm going to share with you, as Nicole talked about, the recipe for what we've done to create employee engagement through a vision and how that vision has helped us to get there. But to do so, I'm going to be very raw, I'm going to be very transparent, because I believe that's what's going to lend to authenticity. So if you look back 6 years ago, you may remember this scene from when President Obama spoke to the nation, and it was a time when the Sandy Hook incident had just taken place. It was a very difficult time, and people were in front of an audience looking for a reason, looking for rationale. And the president, the leader at the time, showed real authenticity by being vulnerable. And so I would challenge each of you to look at that when you talk about employee engagement, and challenge your leaders to do that. And that's what I'm going to do today, is authentic with you. So my journey starts 25 years ago when I started a business in the spare bedroom of my parents' home. And at the time, it was a nation of subcontractors that we brought together, and we cobbled this group together to build version 1.0 of alligatortek. And I had only to make sure that my vision aligned with me, myself, and I. That's all I had to do, right? But I soon recognized that that was not scalable. And I found myself in a predicament where I couldn't scale the organization, and I didn't have enough support from fellow teammates. I started looking for a skill set. What is the skills that embody another person or a team of people that could work alongside me? And with that, I launched into 2.0, where I built a team of people who had a similar skill set and could bring that to the audience. So here we are, a group of warriors out there solving technology challenges. And I found that my biggest challenge was attracting those skilled workers. And while the hard skills were important, I soon found that soft skills were lacking, and people would eventually leave me. And as people started to leave, I recognized that attracting talent was not nearly as difficult as retaining that key talent. So what is it about talent that wants to stay in your organization versus look to another? Nicole mentioned earlier the talent pool that's available to a lot of companies, small and large. And so what could it be that would give us the advantage or the edge? To do that, I decided to do a lot of research, a lot of R&D. And in my case, R&D was rip off and duplicate. I went ahead and looked at how do employees truly stay engaged. It's interesting that 71% of employees today are either not engaged or actively disengaged among the millennial force. And why is that? That's what I wanted to find out. And so I went back to a more nascent stage, looking for a vision. I put on my glasses, and I started to look for how can I examine other companies that have done this. How could we create one of the best and brightest places to work, where it's a place where it's the place to work in Chicago, and people are knocking on our doors to apply. I started looking first at Jack Dorsey. He's the CEO of Twitter. And so Jack looked at each employee as a contributor to his organization. He looked to say, what could they bring to the overall puzzle? And so at the time he interviews each candidate, he'll ask them a one simple question. Why are you here? What is it that drives you to want to apply to be here at Twitter? His goal is to understand their purpose. What is it that drives them individually that could then contribute to the overall mission for the organization? 33% of job seekers use mission as a key differentiator for whether or not they're going to be a part of your organization. Your ability to articulate that mission and then live that mission is what's going to keep your employees actively engaged. We've used that along with core values to really drive purpose. But it goes further than that. If you really want to understand why they're there, you need to understand how they think. What is it that drives their inner makeup? So looking to another legend, if you look at Jeff Bezos, the president and CEO of Amazon, in his first 3 years, he would individually interview each of the candidates that came into his pool. And his goal was to put questions before them that would challenge them to see how they think. So here's one question that Jeff would put before his people. How many gas stations are there in America? So when you see that question, the first thing you're thinking is not the answer, but more why the question, right? You're trying to understand what is Jeff expecting as an answer on the other side. And that's what Jeff was looking for. Innately, how do you intrinsically think, and what is it that propels you to make decisions? How do you process information? He didn't care about the answer, which incidentally is 181,000. He was looking for your thought, your line of reasoning. You start with purpose and mission, then we understand why it is you do what you do and how you think. With that, we can go to a local favorite. Adam Robinson is CEO of a company here in town called Hierology. Hierology has grown from just under 20 employees 8 years ago to now over 150. Adam has embodied a lot of the principles that are available in teachings that you've heard before. If you go to the right person in the right seat at the right time. But in addition to that, we've built on what Adam's done to take further what GE does around hiring practices. Many of you may be familiar with how there's a process at GE of stratifying employees and looking at A, B, C players. The real key is not just stratifying those employees, but looking at how do you engage those employees all along. So we follow a process called top grading that's been formed at GE. It focuses on giving every candidate a career history form that documents their career from the time they were in high school till the current day. Look at each occupation that they've been in, and then interactively interview the candidate, typically for about 2 to 3 hours, and take them through that chronological journey of each position. Our goal is this. The candidates come in and they walk in with a pitch on what they're going to be doing today and where they want to be in 3 to 5 years. But what they can't do is necessarily unwind what you're going to ask them through their chronological history. Through that process, we learn where it is that they function in each role, how they perform, and how they rate the manager on the other side of the table. We then precipitatively take away 2 to 3 key managers and then call those managers and ask them, how can we motivate, teach, and encourage this employee to be an A player in our organization? We've had candidates walk out of those interviews and say how remarkably impressed that they were, that they remembered what had happened so long ago and that had actually forgotten that part of their journey. An informed candidate is a quality candidate. If you think about this entire process that I've laid out for you about interviewing candidates, it may feel as though it's a pretty lengthy endeavor. From the time that you start the interview through the journey of doing this top grading exercise, it takes quite a bit. But all along the way, you're looking to find out what is the mindset of the employee that's going to allow you to keep them engaged. And that's what the payoff is. Better retention, increased productivity, and at the end of the day, better engagement. One of the key elements for us is to look at what it is that the person does in their thinking process. So we administer an exercise called Logic IQ, which actually looks at the analytical thinking process. It's a 30-question test. When my daughter was 8, she scored 15. So the first 15 questions are rather straightforward, but the next 15 really challenge the person around their thinking process. And all of this leads to the new hire presentation. It's amazing to me how many people will take the journey toward hiring an individual, but at the last step, simply put an offer letter before a candidate. Maybe it's me because I come from a sales background. I'll never go ahead and present a statement of work to a client before we know that we're actually on the same page. And no sooner should you present a letter of employment until you know that your candidate is engaged. So we customized an HR presentation deck for each employee before we render an offer for employment. I had a candidate just yesterday John, who said to me how impressed he was he saw a presentation with his name on the first slide. The ability to understand what it is that drives them and to start early and speak often about your mission and where you're headed is really key. I'm going to take you through a few key elements of our new hire presentation and hope you'll see some value from that. We start with our passion. Where is it that our organization is headed? At alligatortek, we develop custom software applications. We look for plays in one of two swim lanes, either applications that are going to streamline a process, perhaps something that's done in Excel or off book, and automate that process to drive it with technology. And the second swim lane is identifying tech, unique tech that's going to help that company stand apart. For us, that's software to fuel business growth. And that's where we impart upon the candidate what we're up to. Our goal is to be very transparent and let the candidate know who we are. So I'll go one step further here with the parable of the faithful servant. For me, that's my own personal mission. To whomever much is given, of him much will be required, and to whom much was entrusted, of him more will be asked. And I do that to help people understand my ethos for how I came to form the company, and what's in it for them if they were to join. We're bringing people into our family as we bring them into our employment. We want them to understand that that's not a small task or something that we take lightly. So here, up till now, we've shared what our company is all about. Now it's time to understand what it is that the employee is looking for. What kind of career path can they expect here? And this is the interactive part where we engage the candidate to find out if what we're saying resonates with them. Key parts are helping them understand that, look, gone are days when our parents might have worked for the same organization for 30 years. The reality is each of these people will be with us for a fixed period of time, and our goal is to share with them that we want them to be in a better place 3 to 5 to 7 years from now than when they started with us. And if we can show them that we put them in a better place, both personally and professionally, we've added to their journey while they've added to our company's journey. There are 4 core values that we'll espouse throughout our presentation, from the time we start interviewing a candidate till the time we bring them on board. No doubt all of you have heard about core values, but I'm curious, by a show of hands, one question. If you were to walk back to your company and roam the halls and you were to spot a candidate and walk up and say, what are our core values? How many of you believe that 60% of your employees know core values like the back of their hand? Interesting, 40%? So in our organization, I will tell you that it boasts around 85%. And the reason is because we live and practice those core values every day. They're part of every employee evaluation. So every time we review our team, we put out our core values and we ask our team, how are you performing to the core values? And ask the manager to respond on how those core values are being lived. We'll further go ahead and actually do 4 employee reviews each year. And so iteratively every quarter, we're engaging that employee to make sure we're living core values. But beyond this boring stuff, there's actually a fun thing that we do. We do a peer award every quarter. The peer award recognizes those employees by their peers who best exemplify core values. So we'll take in all the nominations and we'll ask that the employees rate each other on who they think is best to be nominated for what we call the Gator Award. And I've seen then we'll go ahead and ring these nominations out at our quarterly meeting. And I've seen many a team member brought to tears by how they were touched when fellow teammates said to them they were special and they were living these core values. Of course, it completes with the actual Gator Award where you get a picture with our gator. It's not a real gator, it's a 7-foot stuffed animal. But the photograph that you get with that gator leaves everybody with the impression that they are working in an engaged organization where core values are paramount. We've moved further beyond core values to mindsets. We now have 8 mindsets that we look for. These are the 8 characteristics that exemplify what it means to be an engaged person in our workforce. We brought this together with our leadership sitting around the table, brainstorming on what are the key attributes of someone who's truly connected to our workforce. We then rate each of these mindsets from 1 to 12 and ask that each of our team rate themselves on where they fall. 1 is not bad, nor is 12 excellent, but they're rather points in a journey. And understanding the measure of how everybody feels about their level of engagement allows us to look at what can we do to improve it for them. We've now started using it in new hires to rate them on the way in the door before we even interview them to get a measure for what they think about themselves. All of you are probably familiar with Glassdoor, right? You either love it or you hate it. You've all seen a really good review out there or one that's hard to believe. Jeff Weiner's company is LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is the highest rated company on Glassdoor for employee engagement. And so if you look to why that is, Jeff would tell you it's about transparency. It's about being authentic and sharing with your team who it is you are and what it is that we do. I'm sure many of you have all-hands meetings. We do that. We've taken that one step further with town hall meetings that we do in our organization. Over the last year, we've had a number of challenges around people that have left our organization or clients that we've lost. So times haven't always been positive, but the ability to sit around with leaders, show humility, listen to their questions, and be able to transparently answer those questions has increased our level of engagement. 90% of job seekers indicate that it's important for a company that embraces transparency as an organization that they would consider working for. Right? So how do you create that transparency? In my journey, I found that transparency plus vulnerability creates intimacy. And so creating a level of intimacy with your team members back at the office. Our journey has been about creating a workforce. We've got, as I mentioned, we're one of the smaller organizations here with 80 employees, but it's poised to double over the next 5 years, and we've seen a number of awards come along the way. We look at those awards as more trophies that we received, but they're not the real intention behind what we're doing. They're simply markers in our journey as we strive to build a truly engaged workforce. So recently we were ranked as Microsoft Partner of the Year. We actually were 4 times rated as 101 best and brightest place to work, and twice as the Chicago Innovation, Morris sitting here, and then twice as a Chicago Innovation Award winner. So I'll leave you with this. I challenge all of you to go back and ask your CEOs to truly own culture, as though it may depend on you as HR professionals to be that steward of culture. Ultimately, it's the CEO that owns culture. The goal for us is to get everybody rowing in the same direction, to continue to show transparency and vulnerability, to create a really authentic workforce. Thank you.